Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is David, and in today's video, I am going to walk you through my simple 4-step process on how to go from beginning to end on a client project when you're designing a website. So my background is on Squarespace, but you could probably use this system with any type of build process if you're using WordPress or Webflow or Wix or anything. But this is going to be really useful information if you are designing a site for a client on Squarespace. And if you are new to this whole process, this is going to be gold for you because this system will allow you to go from beginning to end, make sure you get paid on time, make sure projects don't get delayed, all of that good stuff. This process starts right after the discovery call. So once you've done an introductory call with the client, these are the next steps. The assumption is you already have decided on a price and now you are going to take next steps. One powerful thing I want to say about this process is you can always default to the process. Sometimes clients say, oh, I want to do step 3 in the beginning. Well, you could say, I'm sorry, but we have to do step 1 first. So you can always push the blame to the process. And that's a really good way, instead of fighting with a client at times or things get complicated with the client, they could say, no, I really want to do it this way. Well, you could say, I'm sorry, but the process works like this. And this is something that you could discuss on the discovery call. It's something that you could have listed out in your proposal. It's something you could list out in email. It's something you could have listed out on your website. Anywhere you put this so the client has access to it gives a really good relationship that you're not just making it up out of the blue. So this is step 1, starter kit plus a deposit. Let me talk about this. First, you want to send an email that includes a way for your client, what I call a starter kit, to answer the initial questions and get you content. I use a Word document because a Word document is simple. Everyone in the world knows how to use a Word document, basically. I don't use like a Typeform or some fancy system like that. I did another video that should be published on my channel somewhere about the actual document, what the questions are, so look for that. But an initial questionnaire to get the project started, to get you all the information, the logo, the assets, the colors, the photos, all of that stuff is something that you could provide right at the beginning. And at the same time, you want to include a way to make first payment. Now, I'm going to say 2 little caveats on this. If you have a proposal, you don't want them to make payment until they sign the proposal. Unless they are really gung-ho to start, you could send them both, but you want to make sure they sign the proposal. Let me say this is actually a great rule of thumb. You want to leverage the client's motivation to make sure the project goes smoothly. What do I mean? You want to make sure the client wants to start tomorrow. Well, they have to do a few things first. So you don't promise, you'll say, yeah, we can get started tomorrow. However, I need to make sure I have this, and this. That way you keep a clear relationship with the client on where things are at, especially in the beginning. I will not start a project until there is a deposit made. So if you have a proposal, you want to make sure they sign that, and then you countersign whatever that system looks like. And from there, they could then make their first initial payment. There are a lot of proposal softwares and tools you can use. I literally just use a very simple tool for the proposal. Get that signed. Most of it's already like vetted, created, ready to go. Once that's signed, I send them a QuickBooks invoice or a PayPal invoice. QuickBooks works well because people know QuickBooks. And the only thing I don't like about QuickBooks is that they charge you a monthly fee. PayPal works great. And again, everyone knows PayPal, but there's no monthly fee. So that's actually a little bit nicer. Just depends on what you want to show. With bigger clients, I use QuickBooks because it just showed a more reputable position. I feel like it was just something that if I sent a $4,000 invoice on QuickBooks, it looks a lot better than PayPal. All right, so that is step 1. Now, once you've received everything, again, you will not start the project if the first payment is not made. You will not start the project if first payment is made, but you haven't received the content. The way you start the project is once you receive both of those, you'll go into the next steps, which is once you receive them, you'll review it. And if you have any remaining questions, you'll shoot it off to the client. But from there, you will give the client a clear due date. The next step is, hey, I've gotten everything. Thank you. Now I will have your first draft ready for you to review on this day. In a week, 2 weeks, 1 month, whatever your process is. Typically, I would tell the client I would have their project ready, the first draft ready, about 2 weeks from the day they sent me all the material and I reviewed it. One note about this, the biggest delay I had in projects was typically in this step, which was clients delaying on what content to put on their site, how to build their site, all of this. It really depends on where the client is starting from, but content, specifically written content, a lot of clients would get hung up on that. So depending on what your process is, what you're providing as a service, one thing I just overall recommend is encourage the client in the process that they don't have to be married to anything, but they have more than enough insight, wisdom, and understanding of their business to get a first draft up. You don't want perfectionism to get in the way, and you don't want anything else to get in the way where the client is holding up a project for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks. One thing to be mindful of, you kind of just learn this in the process. If you're working with a bigger company, sometimes things get complicated. If you're working with other stakeholders, sometimes things get complicated. So you got to be mindful of those pieces for any project. However, keeping clear deadlines. I remember one client didn't deliver the content to me for over 4 months. They paid the deposit, but they didn't deliver the content for 4 months. That was a really exhausting project. And then once we finally did the first draft, they had a whole different vision for the project and it just became a wreck. We ended up doing a partial refund. Try to keep the project moving. Clients can get a little bit fearful once they've committed at this level. So just encourage them and let them know that everything's going to be all right. All right, so 2 weeks have gone by, you've completed the first draft, and you are going to send them the first take of their site. They're nervous, you're nervous. This is what I would recommend. 2 major tips. Number 1, record a Loom video. If you've never used Loom before, just check out loom.com. Record a Loom video and walk through the website. Some clients will not find all the pages, even if you clearly lay it out. Also, you want to communicate why you did what. The better you communicate and show what you did, they have a better understanding, and you could also cast vision. So, hey, client, this is going to be a great homepage because it leads to your services page, which leads to your contact page. And over time, as you build more rapport, it'll lead to your reviews, blah, 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 blah. Whatever that focus is that you want to highlight for the client, because when a lot of these businesses, small businesses are starting out and they're willing to spend 2 to 5K on a website, they are still trying to figure out what they're selling and what they're doing and building their rapport in the market, all of those things. And initially, they're going to need some vision to see where the site is going. So a Loom video is a great way for them to understand what they're looking at. Next, I always like to add a bit of excitement to the email. The email always starts, the title starts, congrats, your first draft is ready to review. Don't make it boring. Don't make it, I think this is something that just don't deliver boring work. This isn't a homework assignment. This is a project. This is them bringing their dreams to life. This is something they're passionate about. This is something that's exciting because it's creative. Make it something that is exciting for you and the client as you walk through this part of the project. So now we are in step 2, revision number 1. So you are going to send an email, possibly include a Loom video. You definitely need to include a link to the website and the password. Tip for the password, if you're on Squarespace, I always use the word website, no caps. So I do that for all my websites, and that way I don't have to memorize different passwords for different sites. The word website, no capital, is easy for everyone to remember. It's easy for anyone to access, and it's easy for you to keep track of if you're working on 3, 5, or 10 different sites at the same time. So you're sending an email, you're excited, you've sent a Loom video, you've sent a link to the site. Other things I would include would be next steps to give them a clear idea of what's next. Now with revision 1, this is what I do. I used a Word document in the beginning, the starter kit with the initial questionnaire, because again, Word documents are easy. I send a revision 1 document. All it has listed is please mark your revisions here. And then I list out the pages for them. Homepage, services page, contact, about. And then they could tell me what they want changed on each page. Again, super simple, a little bit too simple, but it keeps the process easy for everyone, whatever skill level they're at. Now, one thing you want to look out for, a client may have a clear sense of, hey, please change this on the services page, but I'm not sure what to do with the homepage. In my case, what I tell clients is, hey, part of the process is when I pass you the site, you evaluate everything and then send it back to me, and then I work on everything and then I send it back to you. There's a clear back and forth. You don't want 700 emails in your inbox. I don't want 700 emails in my inbox. Make sure all your revisions are in the document, not in 7 different emails, not in 7 different threads. Everything is in the document. Now, for the documents, you could use a Word doc. You could also use a Google Doc. Google Docs are really simple, and a lot of people, that's easy for them to navigate and control. At the same time, use whatever is best for you. The only thing I would say with Google Docs or Dropbox Paper or Notion or any of those things, they can make revisions to it after the fact, which could complicate things because you could be working on changes and then they make an adjustment to it and now you do double the work. So I would just try to set clear boundaries that, hey, once you send in the document on this day and we've chatted, I will download the document and that will be what I work from. So if they add new revisions and things, that will complicate it. Again, it's not to be hard, but it's to be clear and also let everyone know where things are at. So you sent them the document. Next step is they send it back to you, all their revisions. Oh, one thing I did not mention, there are 2 revisions in this process, step 2 and step 3. I call the first one a major revision and I call the second one a minor revision. That small bit of verbiage allows a little bit of color so the client knows this is when we make major changes and this is where we make smaller tweaks. It allows you to also navigate. You don't want to be making huge changes in revision 2. It may happen, it may happen, it may happen. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you are setting the client up for clear expectations of how the project is going to go. And then from there, you work through that. So the client has sent back their revision 1 document, their major revision document. You review it, make sure they cover everything. If you have any outstanding questions, try to get those answered as well. From there, you do the same process between step 1 and 2 that we just did for step 2 and 3, which is you say, hey, client, thank you for the revision. I have all my notes. I will get the next draft to you in the next 3 to 5 business days or whatever that may be. One other hint I just want to bring up in this, I didn't even think of this until now. You want to make sure you don't work too quickly. Okay, let me say this differently. You want to work really quickly, but you want to make sure you don't show the client that you work very quickly. The idea here is you want the product to be valuable. And yes, if you need to work quickly, but at the same time, be mindful that quick revisions sometimes for the client means that it's easy, when in reality, it's actually hard, but you've gotten really good at it. You play that by ear wherever that works for you, but just a little pro tip for you, it may take me a few hours to build a website, but I would still give the client a 2 to 3 week lead time just because I want to make sure my schedule fits, but at the same time, I don't want them to think, oh, he built this in a day, so it must not be good. That's not necessarily how it works, and clients aren't 100% familiar. Anyway, I could talk all day about this, but overall, I always give a general guide of 2 to 3 weeks for the first draft, 3 to 5 business days for the first revision, and then 2 to 4 business days for the second revision. Okay, so now you have completed the first revision. Again, congrats, your first revision is done. That is the title of the email. I send them the email, I send them the link to the website again, so it's easy to access, plus the password. And then in that email, I give them clear next steps and ask any outstanding questions that I may have. Now, at this part of the process, a clear next step is going to be final payment and starting to schedule launch. Now, let's talk about that. This is part 4 of this process, the last part, which I absolutely love. It's the most exciting because a lot of people's dreams or visions or ideas are coming to life. And this part of the process is the most intimidating for the client, but also the funnest part. All right, so the 4th part of the process is 3 components: final payment, launch, and training. Now, depending on whatever your system is, these are the 3 things that I want to keep in mind at this part of the project. So I just completed the second revision. I send them an email. Congrats, your second revision is done. Now it's time to take next steps. Next steps are this: final payment so that I can give you access to the website. Now, these are very important words and phrasing that help make this project smooth and make sure you get paid on time. So I do not give access to the website to the client until final payment is complete. This is something very important to keep in mind. This is where a lot of people have struggled. They haven't gotten payments. I've always gotten payments. I've never had any problem with payments because, again, I'm using the client's motivation to the advantage of the entire project. And just as a side note, I 100% trust the client, but I want to be mindful that the process is the guiding force, not my emotional feel on the client or the client's emotional feel on me. I want to make sure the process is the guiding force in everything we do. So the verbiage I use is I can give you access or I can give you ownership of the website once final payment is complete. And then I send them the link, QuickBooks, PayPal, whatever it is, so they can make final payment. Then once final payment is complete, I will then give them access to the back end. Once they accept access, I will give them ownership. This is prior to launch, everything else. Once the final payment is made, I am willing and ready to give them full ownership of the site. So that's one part of this process. There's about 2 or 3 things happening simultaneously, but for sure, I do not move forward with giving them access to the back end of the site until final payment is complete. Okay, enough about payments. Now, the last 2 parts after the payment is complete, we want to launch the site and we also want to train the client on how to use the site. Now, this all depends on the client and there's a lot of variables here, but you want to communicate with the client, hey, when would you like to launch the site? And this also depends if they had a previous site and if you're moving a domain and all of that stuff. But for the most part, let's just keep it simple. They are launching a brand new website. How do you go about this process? Well, I would say, hey, when do you want to launch the site? If there's no set date, I'll say, okay, let's plan training in the next week. And then from there, we will launch the site. One thing I do right after training is I make sure the client pays for the website, because if we transfer the domain to the site and they haven't paid for it yet, side note, I never pay for a client's site, but once they pay for the site, from there, we could transfer the domain. Because if you do it the other way, if you transfer the domain first, the site will not go live. Especially if they're moving from a live website, you need to make sure that they have paid for the website in advance because you cannot take it public otherwise. So I schedule training. We use a Zoom link. I record the Zoom call. I train them on how to change text, how to change images, how to change background images, very basic things. And then at the end of the training, I show them how to launch the site. So I show them how to pay for the site. I show them how to make the site public. And then from there, I show them how to either connect the domain if they'll do it, or we'll schedule a time for me to connect the domain. And typically when I connect a domain, if it is for a new site, it can happen any time of the day. If it is for a live site, I would probably do it late in the evening, because that way, if people are visiting the site and the site is down for 20 to 30 minutes, as you do that transition, it's not as big of a deal. And I would say this, if that is happening, communicate with the client that the site may have, I don't want to say issues. What would I tell the client? I would tell the client that the site may be down for a few minutes as it transitions. Also, this process can take up to 72 hours, so be extremely mindful of that. If you're dealing with a high-end client and you're not really comfortable with moving domains, I would recommend getting comfortable with that. I remember being yelled at by a client because the site was still building the SSL security and they were infuriated. What I realized was it was taking so long to build the security because I didn't connect the domain properly. So there were 2 records that I did not add properly. Once I added those, within 5 to 10 minutes, everything was working. I learned a very valuable lesson that day, that you want to make sure all 5 records get added properly to the domain. However, if you're using something like GoDaddy or even Google domains, the process is quite simple. So you want to just make sure the client knows that there is a transition happening, that it will need to build up the security again, and the site may be down for a portion of time. If they have a problem with that, I don't know what to tell you. It is part of the nature of this. And boom, congrats, the site is live. The client site is live, and you could send them the domain and say, hey, look, everything's set to go. You can now access the site, confirm that it's good to go, confirm that the SSL is set up and secure. And then from there, you could do any final steps like SEO. Let's say you want to connect Google Search Console or resubmit the sitemap or any of that stuff. You could finalize the SEO at that point. And boom, at this point, the site is live. Now you can confirm with the client, hey, the site is live, the SSL is secure, ready to go. You are good to go. If you have any additional SEO, like setting up Google Search Console with the domain or resubmitting the sitemap, it's a great time to do that, but you could let the client know the site is up and running. And that is the 4-step process. Just like that, you've gone from beginning to end with a client, communicate that the process is king, and let them know that at any stage of the process, you will not move forward unless everything is done on their side or your side. You do your best to communicate clearly where things are at, ahead of the client's expectations. That way they know what to expect. And that part of the process is so important and so vital because you are not just building a website and building a process on how to build a website, you're also developing a process on how to work with clients. Okay, so let's talk about a few anomalies. Now, there could be tons of anomalies and you could drop them in the comments below if I don't address it, but here are a few that I think of. Let's say you're working on a Squarespace website for a client that they're already paying for. They're not going to move their site because they have a lot of data in there, they have sales in there, they have their analytics in there. They don't want to start a new site. They just want to refresh a few pages. That is fine. In this process, what you would do is you would ask for payment prior to revision 2. So you'll go through the first initial refresh, and then from there, you'll go through revision 1, and then they'll send you notes for revision 2. But when they send you notes for revision 2, you will also ask for final payment because basically that is taking it live. So before you do everything for revision 2, you want to make sure you get final payment. The way I would word that is, hey, we are just about to finish up this project. If you could send payment now, I will make sure these details get done immediately after, and then we could review together if there are any final touches that you need. And actually, I think that's the only anomaly I'm going to chat about right now because I think that process really handles everything else. Even if you're moving from Squarespace to another Squarespace, say 7.0 to 7.1, you would follow the 4-step process identical. You wouldn't launch the site or give ownership of the site until the client has given you final payment. And the general rule of thumb here is you don't want to finish the work until you receive final payment. If you work with the client a few times, sure, you can totally do that. But for the first time, it's very good to keep communication clear that things will not go live. It's very similar to ordering food at Chick-fil-A. You pay for the food and then they give you the food. You could say, well, it's a bigger project or something like that. But at the end of the day, some of these systems are in place to make sure that things go according to plan. And also, the client doesn't ghost you. You're online, so they could just technically disappear. So once they make final payment, I give them admin access. Once they accept access, I give them full ownership, and then we're good to go. All right, so you made it to the end of the video. If you made it to the end, you are my type of people. So hit that like button, drop a comment below, and let me know you got to the end. And with that, if you're looking for more content just like this, consider subscribing. We publish new content every single week. With that, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.